fantastic. This is GT Racing right now.
He's got tracks and he's going the outside of both of them. Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up to him.
Oh my God! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go.
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my God!
God, what?
Fourth of the best sim race. $100,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive and sought-after season in iRacing World Championship history. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Esports Supercar.
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Hello everyone and welcome to yet another round of the iRacing V8 Supercars official series, where tonight is played host by the spectacular Road Atlanta circuit. Just yesterday we saw 80 drivers take to the circuit for the first of 3 Scops Endurance Series races, and it showcased just how fantastic, drama-filled and even controversial racing around these 12 turns in the span of just 2.5 miles of tarmac can be. The race winner at the end of it all would eventually be Jake Burton, whilst the championship leader and protagonist of Scops all ran into issues. Will that trend continue tonight and cause the 74-point margin currently held by Jake Burton in this particular championship shrink? Or can Jake manage to make it 2 in 2 days and get redemption after losing last week at Daytona, leaving the privateer hot-headed after a last lap incident? I'm Bo Albert, and alongside me tonight, as always, is Mr. Zachary Hanlon, who had his very own run in Scops yesterday, and of course our director, Mr. JK Kennedy, who was going to be broadcasting his point of view, but sadly no longer. But of course, can always catch the action here on SimSpeed TV on the iRacing Esports Network. But Zach, you experienced the brutal nature of supercars racing in person yesterday firsthand. Just how was it out there?
Yeah, look, it was tough, but I have felt like I talk the talk, so I've got to walk the walk eventually, and walk the walk. It was very hardcore out there. Everyone loves to have a good old fight, and it's very close quarters, but so much fun. I can't really tell if I was more stressed out or having fun more, but either way, it was an absolutely fantastic experience, and thanks to all the boys out there for possibly not leaning on me as hard as they could have in some cases. I think maybe they know that I'm up here in the commentary booth and I might say some bad things about them. But, it was fantastic racing with those, everyone out there, lads and ladies. And tonight's racing, if yesterday is anything to go by, is going to be absolutely fantastic. As it stands right now, your entire field, ladies and gentlemen, which is at a strength of field of 4,599. Mega strength of field. First 24 cars are separated by currently 1.3 seconds, which is absolutely incredible. And check out that top 14 on your screen, or top 15, less than half a second. That is going to make for some mega racing today. And we saw, especially down into turn number 10 and even down into 1 as well, very good opportunities for overtaking here.
Yeah, there certainly is a lot of overtaking opportunities, and they're going to be used today because, as you said, the field is so close. Currently led by Jared Philcell at the moment, who didn't even do a lap in the race yesterday. He's currently leading by 2 thousandths of a second over a very, very familiar name indeed. Joshua K. Rogers makes his return to the V8 Supercar in the Coanda Sim Sport car, and they will be your front row on the grid. Yesterday's Scops race winner, Jake Burton, is going to line up on the second row of the grid, with Jake Maloney making it a Jake 3 and 4 on the grid, with an Altus Esports 5 and 6 as well, and then a Zero Esports 7 and 8. So the grid very much lining up in formation, which tells me, Zach, that these drivers are getting the most out of the car, as Richard Hampstead and Jordan Ross, your top 10.
Yeah, everyone's really maximizing their potential this evening, and you can see that with all the times on the screen. Sam Sutton going to start out of 11th alongside Wayne Burke in his One Performance Racing Machine. James Mackey alongside Marlon McMullen in 13th and 14th. Chris Coxhead in his V8 Sleuths Esports Machine will start out of 15th alongside Trans-Tasman Racing's Emily Jones. She's got a teammate for company just behind in Kurt Sten out of 17th. James Scott will line up alongside Michael Taliancic is going to start out of 19th alongside Job Stewart in our top 20 position. And then the last 7 cars on the grid this evening, Thomas Hins, Mario Vlasic, Michael Barron, Brian Borg, Damian Johnston, Kai Allen, and Thomas McMillan, who unfortunately has not been able to put in a lap. And he will be starting somewhere that hill down into the final corner here. And I'm sure all the drivers are making sure that they have everything prepared and ready, engines started, and throttles working, gears working, as we shoot down into turn number 1 here at Road Atlanta.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting run in towards turn number 1, and we're going to be getting it underway very shortly indeed. Green light already on, and away they will go, and a great start by Jared Philsell, launching his way in towards turn number 1, already getting very aggressive. Rogers and Burton dicing their way in towards turns 1 and 2, and it's a very quick turn number 1 before they make their way up the hill. Will the whole field make it through? We saw a bit of carnage yesterday, but looking all good at the moment so far for our top few drivers. You can see, I think that was one of the Zero Esports cars trying to attack Jackson Suslanalo, who was a championship protagonist in this and didn't even get a run in Scops yesterday. But at the moment, it's still Phil Sell trying to break away from Rogers, and we know those two are going to be locked together potentially all race long. Jake Burton holding it in 3rd place at the moment, trying to fend from Jake Maloney just behind. So already the field just spreading out single file, which is great to see, but all well and truly bunched up at the same time. So a good run on this first lap, but it's all about this long back straight, Zach, where so many passing opportunities are made.
Yeah, it's going to be tough when everyone's in the train, but once a couple of moves get going, that's Mario Vlasic in the 17 machine, who's come together with McMillan and Kai Allen in the back there. But yeah, being in the long train at the beginning of this race is going to make it difficult for everybody, because everybody's going to have that draft effect, which means that the overlap that you're going to be able to get on your competitors is not going to be as easy to obtain. So we're going to have to look for a couple of early mistakes from some of these drivers, wait till the pack breaks up a bit, and then we will see some action happening, as we're just getting a Modem Simulations replay now into, I think that's turn number 6, and a little bit of a bump there from Kai Allen into Vlasic. And McMillan, unfortunately, trying to take evasive action down the inside, just got caught up in that. And something's happened to Jackson Suslan Harlow as well in his Logitech G Altus Esports machine. Possibly a slowdown coming out of the bus stop chicane. So very unfortunate for him. He's got some ground to make up, but he's got a fast car, and he's still got 27 laps here at Road Atlanta to make it back up.
Yeah, he certainly does, but 27 laps will feel like a very long time around this circuit, especially if you are in the number 1 car at the moment of Jared Philsell. Well, position number 1, but he has the number 1 car with the number right behind him at the moment. These two are going to be enthralled in all, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it hunts down towards the end of the race, because Rogers was very, very close through the S's section, and is just losing a little bit on this second half of the circuit. So potentially just different strengths and weaknesses of the two setups just being shown here. But very much the top 3 trying to make a breakaway at the moment, with Maloney just struggling to hold on a little bit as Ethan Warren gets all kinds of out of shape. But check out this battle a little bit further back. Jackson Suslan Harlow having all kinds of trouble defending from Chris Coxhead, who's getting very racy in these opening stages of the races. And that's something, a bit of a trend we have seen from the V8 Sleuth Esports driver of recent races. Loves to put up a good fight right from the outset, which can be a good strategy. Get into another driver's head early and really put them under pressure to make mistakes. You can see Jackson just running a little bit wide through that section. as we focus our attention a bit further forward with the likes of Wayne Burke, who's enthralled in this massive gaggle of cars. He's behind Josh Anderson, Sam Sutton, Richard Hampstead, Brady Myers, Ethan Warren, and that only gets you into the top 5. A huge slew of talent in this top couple of cars at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good to see that no one's starting to run away too early. These guys are all keeping on pace very well. Ethan Warren just starting to fall back ever so slightly from Jake Maloney up ahead, and in a couple of laps that may not suit him too well, with Brady obviously really hunting down in this championship. He'll be wanting to make his way up the field as much as possible. Just having a look on board with Josh Anderson in his Vendaval sim racing machine. First official V8 Supercars race for Josh in a very long time, but had a strong running in the V8 Scops race yesterday with some good pace. Currently tucked up in that battle there, and that's Jackson Suslin Harlow once again defending from Chris Coxhead. As you said, Bo, very aggressive driver trying to get past early, but you can see what that can do. The gap now that has opened up between those two cars, he's now under pressure from James Scott here, and James might have a little bit of a look into turn one, and he does. There's going to be contact between the two cars, and they're just going to be able to gather it up. But Chris Coxhead is going to lose out big time there. He's lost 3 positions in that one transaction.
Oh, it's going to be a lot more
and he spun around in front of Talyancic there. Didn't see if there was any contact between the two of them, but that is very unfortunate for Chris Coxhead. And it does look like there was some contact there. As we'll just see on board with the modem simulation replay now. So Chris Coxhead turning in fairly early there with James on the inside, and unfortunately contact made at the apex, running wide, and it's back as he comes through turn number 3 here, with Talyancic just carrying too much speed through that corner and maybe expecting Coxhead to pick up the pace a little bit through that corner. Unfortunate for Coxhead after a good start and starting to put the pressure on early. It's not working, but we're back up to the front of the field now, and your recently crowned iRacing VRS GT champion Josh Rogers is now putting on the moves on the several-time V8 Scops champion here, Jared Filsell, and this is a battle which we are going to be seeing for a lot of the race, and these guys have had so many great battles over the years, and Jake Burton's also looking to get pretty keen on this battle as well, Bo.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only driver we're really missing in this is the 77 car of Madison Down, and it would be a fully fledged shootout between some of the best in the business when it comes to supercars racing on the iRacing platform. Of course, these guys are the ones you always think about getting the top results, and we have a showdown well and truly here at Road Atlanta. 29 laps is the race distance, already working lap number 5 at the moment, and Jared Filsell not looking as strong as I perhaps thought. He is looking a tiny bit vulnerable to Josh Rogers behind, and they have to think about multiple factors. Number 1, their race pace. How can they stack up against one another? Number 2, track temperature. It is incredibly hot, so the tires will be heating up very, very quickly, as will the battles, as Rogers looks to the inside and goes for a bit more than a look up to the inside, but won't be able to clear this because there's almost contact. But Filsell lights the car up on the exit, and that does give the position to Josh Rogers at the moment. Won't get too excited though, because you do have to expect this will change and chop around quite a lot over the next few laps. But they also have another and third element to think about here in this race, Zach, and that is a pit stop as well. And we know just how good Evolution Racing Team and Jared Filsell can be when it comes to crunching fuel numbers.
Yeah, everyone's got to really play that strategy card today. And as you said, with this high track temperature, could make quite a big difference on deciding when you come in to take some fresh rubber. I did an official race earlier in the week, and even though I watched so many of these races, I went against my better judgment, went for the overcut, and really didn't work out to my advantage just because the track cooled at the exact wrong time. And that's going to be a big factor for these guys as well. The track could start cooling down significantly, could stay the same, and if it stays the same, it might be better to take this stint right out to the middle. But if it starts dropping off fairly quickly, might want to come in and grab some fresher tires, get those fast times down. But this battle up at the front isn't looking to hold off anytime soon. Filsell now having a little bit of a look to the inside at turn number 10 and thinking better of it. Of course, these guys are only just marginally ahead of the train behind. They don't want to start scrapping too much and become susceptible to all those cars behind, because there's a train of about 4 cars behind them from Jake Maloney all the way back to Sam Sutton. And if they get involved as well, that's going to make it pretty messy for these guys up here. They probably just want to start cruising away until we see the pit stop window opening up, and then we might see a little bit more action. It's pretty typical in these races to see it pretty calm until that point, unless you make a little bit of a mistake like Ethan Warren's just made coming down the hill through the S's there. And Brady Myers really looking to get past the Alta C Sports driver.
Yeah, he's looking for any opportunity at the moment, but there's just not many. But there is one coming up down this long back straight and having a big lunge into the chicane like we saw happen with Josh Rogers at the opening lap. But nothing happening out front, so we'll keep an eye on how Brady Myers can attack the Astro Gaming Alta C Sports car at the moment. But it is a fair distance back, but we will get a nice little judgment here on just how powerful the slipstream is. But of course, Ethan Warren just about in the slipstream of the driver of Jake Maloney ahead as well. So it will be a little bit of a stalemate down this back straight. And at the moment, your leaders are still all in a straight line, which is good to see. But Jake Burton, just interestingly, going for a very large fuel save into the chicane there. So he's just playing that strategy card nice and early, which will definitely pay dividends come the end of the race. But I've got to just laugh for a second how much they are taking liberties through that final corner, just absolutely mowing the grass up at the moment. So whoever is doing the groundskeeping here at Road Atlanta won't be too happy about that. But clearly the drivers just trying to use every millimeter of room they can, as you can see, sliding the way through turn number 1. So the elevation changes really throwing the cars around here, which is just another wonderful character of Road Atlanta. The elevation change, something you don't quite get on all the circuits in iRacing, and in particular in the real world anymore. Of course, you think to the likes of Sochi Autodrome, where it has absolutely no elevation change at all, and they actually promote themselves on having no elevation change. I've got to say, Zach, real tracks, they've got curves.
Well, a lot do, and you know, it's just one of those added complications, and it makes it a lot more difficult in the sim as well, because of course, when you can't feel things, you know, as they say, under your bum, and when you're feeling those G-forces, it can be very difficult to gauge how the traction of the car is going to work. A prime example of that is where the guys are coming up to now, as we're just on board with James Mackey, who's got Jordan Ross having a bit of a look. The traction zone through here, out of turn number 10, the car gets very light over the hill as Jordan Ross now goes down the inside. And we'll see how these guys deal with putting down the traction. He gets bumped out wide, and that's Marlon McMullen going up the inside as well. And then as the car dips down here, it becomes very light once again, and it's very difficult to keep that traction on. Marlon McMullen going for a wild ride, almost getting taken out with Jordan Ross just rubbing the rear bumper there. And now the two TTR and Alta C Sports machines are going to have a look down the inside at turn 1, and Jackson Suzuhara is going to have to be very brave here with another little bump. Jordan Ross is going to have to give up so many positions in just one lap, and that just goes to show one of the other very special features about Road Atlanta, which is what I like to call the flow. And if you get out of the flow here, it is so easy to just drop so much time. And Jordan Ross was only out, you know, he's only hung out to dry on that outside line for a short period of time. But as soon as you're out of the flow and other people are in it, you can just lose so many positions so quickly.
Well, Jordan is a perfect example of that at the moment. If we can get a close-up shot of him at the moment, he was sliding his way out of the back straight, and just look at the margin he has lost at the moment to Jackson Suzuhara. He's not even slipstream range anymore, and that's only in the space of, 5-6 corners at the moment. And I've got to say, Jordan Ross has to be hating this circuit at one point. Won't be looking forward to this returning for next season at all. So just a tough few days for Jordan Ross. And as a sim racing driver, you know, so many drivers don't think about the mental game, don't prepare enough. And, you know, I'm a driver that's fallen very foul of that in the past and just not preparing in the right ways. I've got to say, for Jordan Ross, just probably in a bad mindset at the moment, and really needs to try and regroup for the next few rounds, because we know just how strong he can be. And on his day, he can be fighting it up with the top 3 drivers in your field as well, or even with his teammate James Scott, who's having all kinds of a battle at the moment with Kurt Stenberg. And these two fighting their way down the S's at the moment, and we'll get a nice little overview of the differences between the TTR and the ERT car, and just how they're using the curbs in different places, but steady, just sliding the car on entrance quite a lot. So a bit more entry understeer in that TTR car, which does mean it's probably going to be able to get on the traction a little bit nicer though, especially when you come to this next corner. This right-hander is all about setting up for this corner right here, which gets you onto the back straight. And if you can get the power down, which Stenny does pretty nicely, he might be able to crack under brakes here on the ERT car into the chicane. It's just about keeping right under the rear wing of the car in front. Use that momentum, and you can see the speed he's gaining right now, closing and closing on the 14 car. He's got to be a fair way back, but he might have a crack anyway. Late on the brakes is Kurt Stenberg. Thinks better of it this time, $1 short at the moment, but there is still plenty of laps, 19 to be exact, ticking along in this race. But we do have a big talking point now, Zach, because two of our drivers, Jake Maloney and Richard Hampstead, have dived into the pits very, very early indeed.
Yeah, they are down on the lane very early, and while they're in there, Jake Burton having a look on Jared Filsell as well, and that battle with James Scott and Kurt Stenberg still very alive, but definitely going to be interesting to watch. Maloney there and Hampstead, those guys are very good in these cars, and they'll be wanting to utilize as much of that clean air and that rubber that they have now as possible. So we will see how those lap times start to trickle in. We'll report on that, and we'll see how the strategy is going to work here. But I would suspect, seeing as they were so far up, might see a couple more guys who were in that top 8 group start to come in. Ethan Warren and Brady Myers perhaps might want to consider coming in, and just behind them as well, Sam Sutton, Josh Anderson and Wayne Burke might also consider coming in. These guys out the front, they've got a little more to play with here, but coming in early now might just gain you a few positions on your competitors. And it looks like, in fact, our race leader, Josh Rogers, is going to come into the pit. So, been a while since we've seen him in an official series race, but he's definitely still savvy with the strategy. And that's going to leave now Jared Filsell and Jake Burton at the front of this field. And Jake Burton now, this could put him in an interesting position where without Rogers ahead for the draft for Filsell, he might actually have a bit of an opportunity coming down into 10 on this lap.
Yeah, he absolutely might. So this could be a real determining point of if Jake Burton wants to take the fight to Josh Rogers or not. And I think if anyone's got to take the fight to Rogers, it really has to be Jake Burton, because Filsell was losing a fair bit of ground there to Rogers over the last few laps, and just did not have the pace to stay with him, as Rogers was gapping him to the extent of almost an 0.8 of a second margin. So new tyres now for Rogers, nice and early compared to Filsell. That could be a fairly sizable advantage, but I've got bad news if you are a Jake Burton fan, because even though that there's no Rogers in front, he's still got a slipstream from Mario Vlasic.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but what I've noticed is actually how much Jake Maloney closed in on Rogers. So he's actually done an extremely good job on his pit stop, and he may actually end up potentially jumping Jake Burton and Jared Filsell here. So if those guys don't come into the pits soon, they could be in a bit of strife here. And just having a look on track where they are,
They haven't pitted.
Ethan Warren in the pits, but nobody else at this stage. So this could be a big talking point for this evening's race.
Yeah, it could be, and it's all about how fresh tyres do you want at the end of the race compared to how worn are you willing to run on tyres at this first stint. And clearly Rogers not as comfortable in maybe the first stint, or just wanting to go for strategy, but nonetheless he will potentially have to deal with traffic, because he does have Thomas McMillan just a couple of seconds down the road, so something he has to watch out for potentially if McMillan decides to stay out for a few laps longer. But at the moment it is very nice pace out front by Jared Filsell, but still not quite the pace that Josh Rogers was doing on his tyres before he made a stop. Still lacking that 10th.5 or so, but look at Ethan Warren on the rejoin at the moment, just trying to slot in behind Josh Anderson, manages to make it happen, but very much side by side into turn number 3. Not a place you want to be at the best of times, especially when you're on cold tyres like Ethan Warren was. But we do keep an eye on Jake Maloney at the moment, looking back at one of the many Zero Esports cars which are in this race, and of course great to see so many of them on track at the moment, seeing if Filsell decides to react, and the answer is no. So very, very, very different strategies going on at the moment. I've got to wonder if this is the best choice, because you always want to have faster tyres at the end of the race. Absolutely, I get that. But Rogers on new tyres with now a 2-lap undercut is quite the advantage to chase down, Zach.
This is going to be massive. Richard Hampstead last time round, 0.7 of a second faster than our leaders. So We've got a couple more cars coming down onto pit road now. Wayne Burke, Jordan Ross, James Scott have all decided to pit, as well as Damien Johnston and his Gone Rogue Motorsports machine. But looking for Josh to come over the line now. 120.7, nearly equaling his fastest lap of the race, and 9/10 of a second faster than Jared Filsell and Jake Burton that last time round. So Josh Rogers is absolutely running it at the moment, and at this stage he's going to come out potentially 3 to 4 seconds ahead of Filsell and Burton here if they don't decide to pit soon, but also depending on their fuel, how they go with taking fuel at the stop as well. Looks like it was a fairly good stop there. In fact, Rogers' stop was actually quite slow. So he's already really made back that ground that he's lost in the pit stop. And here we go. So 2 race leaders in the pits now, and this is going to be a very tight race as they come out of the pit lane. I suspect that Josh will probably come out ahead of these guys, but look for Jake Maloney to be scrapping with Burton and Filsell as they come out of the pits.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be very interesting to see just how it pans out on the pit lane exit, because it could be very, very tight indeed. Just has Richard Hampstead done enough? I've got to say, he probably has, already exiting the final chicane at the moment. We're on board with Josh Rogers. We can expect him to go flying past any second now, using all of the grass. And now on board with the Richard Hampstead, also using a little bit less grass, but still very much. But look at this. Rogers is out. Burton, more importantly, ahead of Filsell. And where is Richard Hampstead and Jake Maloney? The answer is not close enough. So Rogers does get out in your effective race lead at the moment, to the margin of roughly 1 second. So a much smaller gap than we anticipated. But Jake Burton now in second, Jared Filsell in third. And those two, of course, I'm going to work it out, 3 laps fresher tyres at the moment. So that's big news as we get a Motum Simulation replay up on screen. And we'll take a look at Josh Anderson defending from Ethan Warren at the moment. And around the outside is a bold move to do by Ethan Warren, trying to pull it off. And just trying to go out with it at the moment, and goes all the way around the outside. Big wiggle under brakes there, and very aggressive racing between the two, getting the tyres absolutely lit was Ethan Warren, but it didn't matter because he got the pass done nonetheless. And in terms of brave moves, that is right up there, Zach.
Yeah, especially in a V8 supercar, the brakes are difficult in that corner at the best of times, and trying to brake while turning and making that outside line. Very stout driving there from Ethan Warren. And most of our cars have now come into the pit lane. Only James Mackey, Emily Jones, Michael Talyancic still out on track, with Brian Borg having come down onto the pit lane. But yeah, very interesting that Rogers didn't come out as far. I mean, he was nearly 2 seconds slower in the actual pit stop than Jake Burton. Jake Burton's total lane time was about 1.5 seconds faster, so that definitely hurt Josh just a little bit, but he's shown great performance in this car, and I don't think that the tyres are going to go too off towards the end of the race, that 3 laps is going to make a difference, but it will make a difference now with Josh's tyres probably just starting to fall off in the next lap. And Jake Burton's are just coming in now, and they'll be good for the next 3 or 4 laps or so, and he's already right on the back of the Coanda Sim Sports driver.
Yeah, I did allude to earlier in the race that perhaps Jared Filsell wasn't the guy to take it to Josh Rogers, but Jake Burton just might have been. And just look in the slipstream, closing and closing. He won't go for a move here, I would not think at all. But that is a very, very worrying sign if you are a Coanda Sim Sport fan, because Josh Rogers, well, he had the lap times for sure, but he just doesn't have the margin at the moment. Now a very, very slipstream hungry number 33 car, even though it has a 6 on the side of it, is looking very quick, hunting him down in towards turn number 1 now. 0.6 of a second is the live margin, but it's a lot less as Burton just so much quicker on entry speed. That is going to be a very, very worrying sign for Josh Rogers now into the S's. And I remember racing Rogers in the Sprint Series Australasia, which you can catch next week on Wednesday night. But a long time ago, I was racing Rogers, and I have to say, this was the section of track where I was just blown away by the speed he could carry. Just his knowledge of where the bumps were and how to attack the corner was really brilliant. But I've got to say, Burton doing a fantastic job to match him and having to force Rogers into a defensive move, which slows them all up. And hello, Jared Filsell. He buys his way into the battle. Burton buys his way into the back of the Coanda Sim Sports car, not once, but twice. on the exit now. They are absolutely nose to tail down the back straight, lap 17. Already 12.5 to go. Bump drafting Daytona 500 down the back straight. Phil Sell on the grass, 2 wheels, and Burton continuing just to hit Josh Rogers. This is getting dicey. This is getting sideways in a straight line. Phil Sell up the inside of Jake Burton with a massive lunge, and I'm not sure if that was beneficial to the two of them both, but Jake Burton probably should have committed to a move there. He didn't in the end. Falls back to third, but this battle, the war flags have well and truly been raised, and there is no white flags in sight. This is a fantastic scrap, and Zach, we have 12 very, very long laps to come.
Yeah, well, the pit stops are done and the gloves are off now, and these guys are really pushing it to the absolute limit. As are the guys behind them. Brady Myers starting to put quite a bit of pressure on Jake Maloney once again, but that battle up the front, I know what you mean. I think Burton probably should have gone for a move, but I have a sneaking suspicion that he may have just an itty bit more fuel saving to do before he can really commit to anything. Now, that doesn't mean that he has to fuel save for the rest of the race, but maybe he just has to do a little bit now so that he can make that challenge towards the end of the race. But with the tires being in the condition they are at the moment, now really is the best time, and it's looking very tight once again between these guys. I'm sure that we will see some more bump drafting at the very least between Phil Sell and Josh here, though Jared's actually going to go for the side draft, and he's going to commit himself for a move into turn number 10. Almost a little bit of a bump there as they come through the kink and into turn number 10, but Josh Rogers very mega on the brakes there, super late, picks it up nicely, and he's going to stop the undercut there by just parking the car on the apex of the corner just slow enough that it's going to kill the run for Phil Sell there. And looking a little scrappy through that final corner is Rogers. He's run on the outside all the time, and he's also been clipping that grass on the entry into turn 1. I don't know if that's a strategy to get a little bit more rotation out of the car, but definitely doesn't look very fast. And he's run deep into turn number 3, and now he's got Phil Sell all over the back of him, scrubbing paint across the back of the Coanda Sim Sports car, trying to push him down the hill through the Estes and into turn number 5. Josh has been looking very wildly through there, ran very deep last time, keeps it nice and clean this time, but that group behind them, headed by Jake Maloney, they're looking up at this battle and they're going, oh yes, come on boys, keep it going, we want to catch up and we want to get in on this party, especially Brady Myers, who is, as we said earlier in the broadcast, chasing down that man you can see in screen just behind Jared Phil Sell, Jake Burton. Currently leading the championship. Phil Sell's going to go for another move here down into turn number 10. Is he going to be able to get it done this time, or is Josh going to be too good on the brakes? Phil Sell once again very hard on the brakes, but Josh just too committed and lots of confidence in the braking at the very least in that car.
Jared Phil Sell just playing with his food at the moment. He can see what's in front of him. He knows what he has to do, but not committing to the full move at the moment. Just going left, going right, and seeing what he can do as it's all going a little bit south for Brady Myers. Very defensive there towards turn number 1 up to the inside. What's going to happen here? The answer is almost contact and almost the car shoved off the road there, but they're going to fight their way all the way into towards turn number 3, but still no move can be made for Brady Myers on Richard Hampstead, a bit loose there, and sends him wide up the inside. A fantastic move if he can pull this off, and goodbye Richard Hampstead. Through the grass he will go, and a bumper to the back, and Brady Myers forced off the road. And I've got to say, a guy like Richard Hampstead, that is not a move you'd expect from him. Altus Esports, it makes it 3 wide into the next corner as these two dice extremely hard. Ethan Warren trying to buy into this. Contact almost made with Richard Hampstead, and there is contact made. It's all going a little bit wrong for Richard Hampstead, and it's going to be side by side down the back straight. As look at this for-your race lead at the moment. Rogers and Phil Sell, how many times have we said it? How many times have we said they've almost touched down the back straight? Heading into the chicane, Phil Sell just cannot commit, cannot make it happen. And again, but he goes wide. Can Phil Sell set anything up? Can Burton set anything up? As Rogers just burst into wheel spin at the moment, cannot get the power down on the elevation change. And look at this, 3 wide on the exit of the chicane. One Performance Racing, Wayne Berg gets 2 positions in a single corner. Ethan Warren makes it as all kinds of wrong for Richard Hampstead. Makes a big check up down the front straight. Sam Sutton going to go almost 3 wide in towards turn number 1. As it's still going on at the moment. A great scrap and goodbye exit stage left for Richard Hampstead. It hasn't been his lap. It hasn't been his race at all. He almost won in Scops yesterday, but it all went a little bit pear-shaped in the end for him there. It's gone a bit pear-shaped for him now. Richard Hampstead having a nightmare 2 days, but the racing has absolutely kicked off. 9 laps to go, but the tension rises on our effective top 3, because Michael Taliantich is doing Michael Taliantich things and refusing to pit, but Jared Filsell has refused to pass Rogers for the last few laps. And I'm trying not to get excited about this, but it's hard not to when you've got these 3 fighting for an effective race lead. But can Filsell finally commit? It's the furthest alongside he's been for quite a while now, but is he willing to try it all the way on the brakes? The answer is almost. He's keeping his car alongside, almost contact, as Rogers is turning in there, and that's going to set Burton up quite nicely on the power. He's got the best exit of the 3 cars. He's going to get Filsell if he can do it on the apex. He does it just about, but with that nicer line, Rogers is able to hold the lead and extend the margin as Burton and Filsell get very, very dicey towards turn number 1.
Yeah, and those guys have a lot of history between each other as well. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, our field has been cleansed. Michael Taliantich has come into the pits, which means that Josh Rogers is back to being your race leader. And this has been an absolutely monumental battle. I didn't think that Filsell was actually going to try and get past Josh until a few more laps into the race possibly, but it's all gone a little pear-shaped for Filsell now, and Jake Burton once again is the man charging for the lead, and he seems to have the pace of the car to be able to do it. Almost a little bit of a touch into turn number 7 there, and that is going to really set up Filsell now. So now Josh has the lane choice here. He can pick who he's going to give the draft to. He's going to give it to Jared Filsell, who's going to push him down the straight and effectively possibly save him a position from Burton here. But Burton surely is going to be committed on the brakes, pulls back into line, and just tries to subside this battle ever so slightly. With only a few laps to go, these guys are going to be really careful not to make anything too rash happen, and Filsell's going to send it back up the inside, just like Jake Burton did the lap before, and says, mate, you can do that, I can do that. Let's just call it even and let me go for the lead, thank you. And you'd expect nothing less from a man as versed in this car as him, and he'll be wanting that lead more than anything. He's not in championship contention. He's just here for the glory, and after a sad day yesterday for him, he'll be wanting to make that up in spades. Jackson Suslin-Harlow coming under quite a lot of pressure now from Emily Jones, who had a very good run in the Scops race yesterday until she had some unfortunate contact, which sent her spinning around. A little bit of redemption for her today, getting some good racing going. We'll take you back up to the lead of the race, because that's Mario Vlasic just up ahead of the leading trio. And Josh Rogers might just be thanking Mario as he comes flying past down the back straight. You can see how much of an effect that's had, but Filsell might actually get choked up a bit here with Vlasic being there. Just a bit too much of a risky move. Vlasic doing a good job of getting out of the way of our main contenders here, but Jake Maloney's really closing up on these guys as Filsell once again pushing the back of the Coanda Sim Sports car through the downward hill into the final corner here.
Yeah, he is. He's looking in alternate places right now, up to the inside of turn number 1. A brilliant move by Filsell, but Rogers trying to get the cutback, but the traction just isn't there. I don't think anyone really thought that was going to be happening as Jordan Ross's bad weekend continues. He's stopped on the side of the track, as we'll get a replay very soon, but at the moment we want to keep our attention because Jake Burton is just launching himself at the rear bumper of the Coanda Sim Sports number 1 car, and Rogers, well, he's been under threat for the last few laps by Jared Filsell. How is his offense against Jared Filsell? We'll get a Motum Simulation replay up on screen for you. And Jordan Ross, what a weekend it has been. It's got all kinds of out of shape there for TTR and the Astro Gaming car, and Jordan Ross just copying the absolute worst of it into the wall, and that is a disaster there for him. So it's just been a horrible few days for him, but we know how quick he can be. We know he can bounce back, but this has been the most tame it's been down the backstraight for quite a while, so I'm expecting something dramatic to happen under brakes. But surprisingly tame on lap number 24, but 5 laps to go. means the pressure's only going to ramp up very, very soon. But Phil Sell and Jake Burton looking a lot quicker than they were in the past because their fresh tyres really starting to come in clutch for them. And just Rogers not having that outright pace he did have at the start of the race. So he's going to be a little bit careful, maybe just try and drive a little bit easy over the next few laps to reset the tyres, get them back into a nice operating window, and he can have another crack at Jared Filsell, who pulls away by 0.3 of a second on that lap, but are still your top three separated by half a second, which is just the kind of racing you can expect on all of our series here on SimSpeed TV. So if you do want to see more of this brilliant action, be sure to subscribe, and of course to the iRacing Esports Network where you're watching currently, because we have some very nice racing coming up indeed. But we will still have to close this race off, and it's all going to be about how Jake Burton can maybe attack Josh Rogers and finally try and make something happen to Jared Filsell. We saw those two fight in the earlier stint of the race, and we know Burton has the measure on Filsell when their two are locked head-to-head at the moment at least, but Burton has to make something happen with Rogers, and Rogers may be going to make this quite easy, or he's going to go ultra defensive. The answer? Make it nice and easy. Jake Burton versus Jared Filsell, round number 2, coming up, Zach.
Yeah, well, I think Josh has played a pretty smart move there. He probably knows that he doesn't quite have the pace to send it to Filsell, but he knows that Jake has the same tyres that Filsell has and that he has the pace as well. So Josh might just decide to tuck in here and hope that there's going to be some big sends up ahead of him, and he might just be able to pick up all the scraps that fall out of that. Wouldn't be too surprised to possibly see Jake Maloney up on the podium as well. He's still plugging away and putting in some good laps. And just while we're shouting out all the socials as well, ladies and gentlemen, chuck a big thumbs up on this video if you've enjoyed this evening's racing. It has been absolutely monumental week after week. The iRacing V8 Supercars official series does not disappoint, and you have 3 of the best drivers taking it to the lead of this race this evening, and it has been absolutely phenomenal. So chuck a big thumbs up on the video, guys, and as both said before as well, make sure you subscribe to the iRacing Esports Network and SimSpeed TV. Jake Burton closing on your race leader, Jared Filsell, down into turn number 10, probably a little bit far back. This time, he's just going to give it one more rotation around the circuit before he tries anything. He's got to get that setup right, and if he gets a good run out of here, he might even try a move into turn number 1, taking the wide line. He's got to keep the speed through the final corner. Done it fairly well. He might be able to have a go. He's got some good overspeed here. He's going to have to go for a late lunge, and it's not going to be quite enough. Definitely goes early on the apex there, and maybe even forced Filsell a little bit wide, just thinking about the fact that he was there. So now Burton playing the games, and you can see Josh Rogers just starting to fall off a little bit. 4-lap or 3-lap older tires than these guys. Probably not a massive difference, but definitely just enough to start falling away ever so slightly. And Jake Burton's got a really good run here. Just needs to get 2 more corners nice and true, and he'll have an excellent setup for a run down into turn 10. So we watch James Scott and Michael Taliancic, who pitted very late in this race, now charging back through the field on some fresh tires. And that is another position for the Pursuit Sim Racing driver, up into position number 17 for him. Down the back straight, Jake Burton very close now. Surely he's going to be able to put a move on here. He goes to the inside. This is the move for the lead. Late on the brakes. He's definitely there, but Filsell's going to make him try go the long way round through the second part and through the right-hander at the end. Now this is what Josh Rogers has been waiting for. He wants to make up the scraps if it all goes wrong, and unfortunately for Jake Burton, Jared Filsell just placing his car perfectly on the road, as we see as well Jake Maloney hunting in the background, trying to make up as much ground as he possibly can in case something comes to fruition for him. But these top 3 drivers just not letting anything go at the moment as we come down through the S's once again with 2 laps to go. Who is it going to be? Filsell, Burton, Rogers. You can pick any of them and you'd probably be right. But at the end of this race, only one of them is going to be crowned the winner. And I'm not a betting man, Bo, so I'm going to keep my nose out of it. But this has been an absolutely monumental race between these 3 guys.
Well, I think if you were betting on this series, you'd be losing quite a lot of money. Every week it ends up so unpredictable. No one can create a form book for this series because every week it chops and changes more than Cam Dancer's racing lines. And I've got to say, Jake Burton is really trying to make something happen here in the slipstream and closing up with just 3.5 kilometers to go when the start-finish line is crossed this time around. Can't make anything happen on this particular lap. So it's going to be all about the final lap unless Burton can set the run up absolutely beautifully out of the chicane, which he does. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going all the way towards turn number 1, and it's going to be a fantastic battle there. But I think Jake Burton going to be just a little bit too far back on this occasion unless he gets very optimistic on the brakes, which he is, but not optimistic enough. So he's got to just try and sit behind the Logitech G-sponsored car and make something happen. But through these S's, get your line right, and like Zach alluded to earlier in the race, the flow. And when you are in these heated situations like Jared Filsell, Jake Burton, and Josh Rogers are at the moment, flow is so critical. And at the moment, Burton falling out a little bit. Filsell just able to eke that gap out marginally, and then Burton just again launching the car into wheel spin, cracking under pressure when he needs to be an Iron Maiden of pressure on the back of the Evolution Racing Team car. Under brakes now into the most critical corner on the circuit, which could eventually decide this race, and Filsell with a beautiful exit, but it's still on at the moment. Burton getting closer and closer, but will the slipstream be enough? I don't know if it will be, but the braking margin might be enough. Into the final chicane it will go. Burton with so much overspeed. He is just side by side into the braking zone. Burton and Filsell. Who's it going to be? Who's going to come out of chicane on top? Contact is made. Burton goes around. Rogers might get the best run of them all. And he, on old tires, 3 laps old, around the outside, going to make something happen on Jared Filsell around the outside. It's going to be neck and neck. And Filsell in the grass. Rogers wins it by the smallest of margins. An unbelievable race. Filsell, he should not have broke through that final corner. He cost himself. He had the line, he had the margin, but he doesn't get the winner's trophy. Josh Rogers with an absolute clinic clinches it at the line. We said it was a bold move to let the two race out front. Somehow, some way, he has pulled it out of nowhere. Contact Burton went around, and a beautiful run by Rogers just got closer and closer, and somehow he should not have won it from here, but in the grass sideways, he somehow takes a brilliant win. That might just be the best finish I've seen. Daytona was brilliant, but that, Zach, that was something.
I can't believe it. I mean, it was obvious something was going to happen down into 10. I'm really surprised Jake turned in like he did, knowing that it was the last lap. Filsell's there. I don't know. I probably would have gone for a wider line there to make everything work. But wow, that has got to be one of the most exciting finishes to a race we have ever had here on the Monday night series. And very unfortunate for Jake Burton. And look at him on replay. Kudos to him for not just spearing it straight back out on the track, waiting for a little bit of a gap and letting people see him before he jumped back on. And he ended up in, I think, 11th. So big loss for him, but that is just unbelievable. Josh Rogers for Coanda Simsport, that was the drive of a world champion. You know, I mean, he hasn't been in one of these V8 supercars for a very long time, at least officially. And to come out and put a performance like that on and win the race the way he did, just incredible.
That was absolutely brilliant. Race results on screen. Josh Rogers takes the W from Jared Filsell by 34 thousandths of a second. That is remarkable stuff. Jake Maloney ends up walking away with a podium of all things, with Brady Myers and Wayne Burke your top 5. Great results from all those guys. Ethan Warren, Josh Anderson, 6th and 7th, with Sam Sutton, Richard Amstead, and Marlon McMullen your top 10. And Zach, we don't even see Jake Burton until 11th place.
Yeah, ended up home in 11th after such a monumental battle for the lead, and showing a lot of patience throughout that race as well. Very unfortunate to see a result like that. And speaking of that result, Brady Myers is going to pick up massive championship points for that, and that is going to have big championship implications, but we will continue. James Mackey home in 12th position, Emily Jones in 13th, Kurt Stenberg in 14th, Jackson Suslan Harlow 15th, Thomas Hinz made his way up into 16th, not a bad run for him. Then we had Michael Teliantic in 17th, James Scott in 18th, Chris Coxhead in 19th, Job Stewart in 20th, and the remainder of our 27 car grid, of which only 3 cars did not finish on the lead lap. We had Brian Borg, Michael Barron, Thomas McMillan, and Damian Johnston last car on the lead lap. Mario Vlasic, Jordan Ross, and Kai Allen are retirements from this evening's race. But, you know, I mean, I'll say it. Road Atlanta is hands down in my top 3 favorite tracks in the world. And that race this evening, I mean, I know we had V8 Scops yesterday and everyone was in good practice and everything, but that race is just one of the perfect examples of why I love this racetrack so much.
I think it's pretty hard to hate this track after what we've just witnessed. That was a fantastic race in the end, and my voice box is definitely feeling the effects of that as well. But if that doesn't get you hyped up for the rest of the week, then I'm not entirely sure what will, because on Tuesday night, so that's just tomorrow, we have an exciting new series, which of course you did get a little taste of last week, but kicking off round after round. And Zach, that is of course the Just Send It Championship, which is a very unique competition in which it's literally a free-for-all. Anyone with an iRacing subscription can find their way in the lobby and make their way into the race against some very big names. Just last week, we had the likes of Scott McLaughlin, we had Dylan O'Keefe, we had Steve Owen, some really, really big names in there, which is fantastic to be able to jump in there as well. Even Anton Di Pasquale was in there. Some great names. And for anyone to be able to jump in and race with those guys, it's got to be a cool series, Zach.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, I'm pretty privileged in the fact that I got to race with Shane and Scott a lot when I was in my early days of learning how to sim race. But just to see guys like them, and as you said, Steve Owen, Anton Di Pasquale, guys who are in the scene, who have been in the scene for a long time, coming onto the online platform and having a lot of fun with it and showing that it is, you know, something that real racing drivers are thinking about and want to get involved in, because it's good fun. And at the end of the day, those guys are racers and they just love racing. And if they can just get on the PC at home and go out and have a good fun race with a bunch of other people, they love to do it. And it's really good to see those guys coming out. And it's also, as you said, an awesome opportunity for, you know, you guys sitting on the couch at home or sitting in your rig watching the race. You know, you can jump in and you can race against Scott McLaughlin and Shane. Just probably just don't want to be the guy to wreck them, but you know, it should be very fun to watch indeed. No,
it certainly should be, and we've got some more fun watching for your pleasure on Friday as well. In the morning for us in Australia, we have the GT Championship, which should be a pretty fantastic round as well. Those guys have had some brilliant racing. Just think back to Spa last week, side by side. And they just love to race the entire way through. And the safety car at Spa really threw it up. And it could do every chance once again this week. And later on Friday that afternoon at 9:15, we also have the Australian Online Sim Racing Championship. And that should be some exciting racing once again. And then if that's a little bit too much road racing for you in a single week, then we've got you covered as well. On Saturday, the major series heads to the Michigan round in the Class A NASCARs. And NASCARs are always a little bit of fun, aren't they, Zach?
Yeah, I've never, unfortunately, really raced the NASCARs, but I do love getting out on the ovals, and even just jumping out in the street stocks is always good fun. Getting that, you know, there's nothing quite as tight as oval racing when you're just going lap after lap after lap, side by side, millimeters between, you know, 20 cars all going down the back straight. It's really good and good to see, you know, a different audience of people taking to it. I'd really love to get involved in it a bit more. Wish I had the time, but it's good to see a lot of people getting involved in the oval scene as well.
Absolutely. But then, of course, on Sunday, we do return for the Oceanic Endurance Championship, which should be a very exciting round as well. I believe that's going to be at Spa-Francorchamps, so a very high-speed circuit. And an endurance race around Spa is always quite a lot of fun. But then we do return next Monday for the iRacing Supercars official series. And that's going to be taking place at Sebring. And if it is anything like tonight was, It is going to be an absolutely cracking show. But from us here at SimSpeed TV, broadcasted on the iRacing Esports Network, that was a wrap on perhaps the greatest race we have seen in this series for a very, very long time. I'm Bo Albert. Alongside me tonight was Mr. Zachary Hanlon, with Jay Kennedy doing an absolutely horrible job on the cameras. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Gotta love this time of year.
What I like most about working for EP Rock
can be
is that no 2
champion.
days are ever the same.
Let's go
One day
play
could be
on
in the
racing.
office, next day training from one side to the other location. This is what it's about.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's going around the outside of both of them. Maloney. Oh,
he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my God! Big crash! Oh my goodness! Half the field's gonna get rolled.
Six very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go. Oh no!
That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?